Welcome to 3Ps in a Pod, the podcast about parenting, pediatrics, and perimenopause. I'm Christy Herseman, founder of The Chat and mother of three.
I'm Claudia Gray. I'm a pediatrician, an author, and a mother of four as well. So, Christy, we've done our last two episodes on the physiology of teens, of adolescents, the biology, the physical aspect, the brain aspect, emotional, the social aspect. And today we're going to talk about something that's related, and that's about body image and self-esteem. And we're going to mention this sort of trending concept of looksmaxxing as well. So listen up if you're a parent of teenagers.
Yeah, this is such an important discussion because we're going to look at the influence of peers and social media on self-perception, how our teenagers see themselves and how they see themselves is really important because it impacts how they carry themselves in the world, the kinds of relationships they have, the kind of jobs they're going to have. It has so many implications. And so it's really important that they have a strong sense of self-worth. But we're going to take a look today at some of the things that can undermine that and how things can go wrong and then how we can support them. So let's start with some definitions. What is body image?
So, Christy, I think the easiest way to see body image is to say, oh, this is what I see in the mirror. But actually, it's so much more than that. Body image is made up of your thoughts and your beliefs and your feelings about your body. So you could look in the mirror, see something, and then have a negative connotation, and those are the feelings that you take with you. And these patterns are shaped over time by your family household, your habits, by the world around you, by the influences around you. You may feel in your own body image that you're not happy and you want to change certain features, such as your nose or your height or your muscularity. And of course, these thoughts about body image and self-perception and self-esteem are such an integral part of adolescent issues. Sometimes people have a very positive body image. But many people have a very negative body image based on their experiences and based on their thoughts. The good news is that a negative body image can change to a positive body image. So this is malleable and something that we can improve over time. So it's worth knowing the background and what we can do to improve it.
Sure. So it's actually such a subjective thing that has so many different influences on how we see ourselves, and sometimes I guess it can be very skewed depending on how you're feeling and a whole lot of other factors. And so of course with social media that has made it even more complex is we seeing other people who are filtered, who have carefully edited pictures, and then over time we see that as normal and we see it as an impossible standard. And then added to that is our young people are seeing photographs of themselves so often. If they're sending snaps to friends or they're taking pictures to upload, probably way more than any generation, they're seeing photographs of themselves. So possibly looking at these filtered images and their own images, and then that can impact their self-esteem, right?
So there's this disconnect because often the filtered images are an impossible standard to achieve, and that takes our self-esteem down a few steps.
Yeah. So explain to us why teenagers in particular are vulnerable to a poor body image.
So the teenage years, as we've heard, is the stage of becoming. It's a stage of great transition. And with that, we are particularly susceptible to factors that affect our self-esteem and our body image indeed. So the first is that the body is changing rapidly. It's a confusing stage. We're developing breasts, our voice is lowering, there are lots of shifts, we can get acne. And these changes really influence how comfortable we are in our own skins. There's a lot going on. It's confusing. Who am I? What's happening? What's going on here? And with that, with cognitive development, becomes this awareness of how you are looking. So a little 5-year-old boy would have no problems with his looks on a daily basis, whereas a 15-year-old boy is very conscious of the looks, and that's part of cognitive development. Then, of course, there's the influence of peer pressure. As we become adolescents, our peers' opinions become so important to us. And We really want to fit in with what we look like, what our hair is like, what makeup we're wearing, what clothes we're wearing, and that's all part of your self-image and your body image. This is a stage of great uncertainty. We try to figure out who we are. And with this uncertainty, we are also easily influenced. And that's a really big reason why teens are so drawn to these social media characters and their beautiful lips and their, perfect angular faces and their noses. We try to figure out who we are. Is that who we are? Is this who I am? Am I good enough?
Sure.
And as you mentioned, a huge factor these days is the social media factor. And studies have shown that at least 40% of teenagers say that their social media interaction makes them feel less confident about the way they look.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not just a lack of confidence. It can have a whole spiral of effects: negative self-esteem, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, body dysmorphia. Doesn't mean to say that social media is all bad, but we must remember that this is not a reflection on real life. And when we start comparing ourselves to these perfect people, it starts to entangle itself with our self-esteem, and we feel the need to have the latest look, the latest product, because that's what we need to look like.
Gosh, it sounds like the perfect storm of perfection and your body changing so much and feeling like you don't want a lot of attention on your body because you're often feeling awkward. Things are changing so rapidly. Everybody looks so different from one another during adolescence as they grow at their different stages that it's quite hard to have a positive body image. But it's so wonderful when you see someone with a healthy body image that's just comfortable in their skin. So compared to a negative one. So what are some signs that your child's got a good, healthy body image?
Yeah, as you say, it is so very refreshing. And often those people come across as so confident and so easy to interact with because they're not trying to look good the whole time. So, people with a good body image are just comfortable in their own body. They don't love everything all the time, but they're not overly negative or critical most of the time. Also, it's an appreciation of what your body does. It's this miraculous accumulation of organs and systems and nerves and cells, and it's an absolute miracle. And if you just stop to think, flip, I've got a healthy body. I can walk, I can run, I can interact. It makes you put it in perspective. So what if I have one slight angular defect in my nose? If you have a good self-esteem and a good healthy body image, your mood doesn't depend entirely on your appearance. So, bad photo won't make you feel awful about yourself for the rest of the day. You'll be put it in perspective and say, oh, that was my best photo, but never mind. I know I'm much better than that. It makes you more present in your daily life, and you don't have to feel that you have to compare yourself to others so often if you're happy in your own skin. Also, if you understand that your worth isn't based purely on appearance, goes a long way in having a healthy body image. And of course, you'll still practice self-care. You still want to look good, but it's not that if one hair is out of place, you have a terrible day. So it's really putting it in perspective. You don't have to be confident all the time with a healthy body image, but it doesn't control your entire life.
Sure. That's wonderful. And we obviously that is the goal as parents, is that our children have a healthy body image, but with so many factors at play, can you just let our listeners know what are some of the signs to look out for that my adolescence doesn't have a healthy body image?
Yeah, and some of these things, the listeners will say, well, my kid does that all the time. And of course, some of this is within normal limits, but if it's over the top, then we need to maybe say alarm bells. So they keep on checking their appearance all the time. They're almost avoiding photos or social situations if they're not feeling good about their appearance. It's, oh, my hair's so awful. I'm not going to go to this party because I just look too terrible. They compare themselves with others a lot. They say, oh, look at this person. They've got such nice hair, or this is what I want to look like. And then they feel the pressure to fix or change their appearance. So they start saying, I don't like my nose, this and that. And they really are focused on appearance. The other thing with the negative body image is that your mood, your very confidence and your very daily interactions can be influenced by what you think you look like on that day.
Yeah.
So if you're having a bad hair day, or if you've got a tiny little pimple on your forehead, you just want to hide away and you sort of underperform because you're worried that your external facade isn't perfect.
Yeah. Gosh, as you're talking, I'm just thinking of examples just that I've seen. I mean, I remember a friend's daughter, every single picture on social media, she'd always have her hand like casually in front of her face. And it was because she was so self-conscious of her mouth and her teeth.
Oh.
Another friend's daughter who would only ever wear really baggy clothes because she was so self-conscious of her body.
Sure.
And so for me, these are, I mean, as you say, some of them are just going to be normal and they're going to grow out of them and they're going to be okay. So I think we don't want to make these things bigger, but it just shows that they're really, really aware of themselves at this age. And it's important that we build their body image. And we often think of body image, when we think of body image, we think of girls. It's often, you know, that's where my mind goes. And we often think, oh, the boys are fine. They're much more confident. They're much more comfortable. They're okay. And that was probably true a generation ago, but that has changed a lot, especially with social media. We know that men in general are taking care of themselves more. They, you know, we have salons for men now, and you know, they are taking care of themselves. But we are seeing online something that you and I both been concerned about recently, and that's the concept of looksmaxxing. So can we just talk a little bit into this concept, if you can explain it to us? What is looksmaxxing, especially when it comes to our teen boys and young men, and what even is that?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Body image issues have always been an issue in girls, generations and generations and generations. And as we were discussing, they've also fluctuated through the generations. So in the Victorian era, you wanted to be plump because that was a sign of opulence, of richness. And then there was the twiggy stage where you wanted to be skinny and you could be fairly lazy and a lady of leisure. And then a stage that I've really enjoyed is a stage of looking a bit stronger and focusing on strength rather than skinniness. But we were also discussing with GLP-1s, etc., which have a huge role to play in many people who are struggling with being really overweight, so it affects their health. But taking GLP-1s as young women, as teenagers, to get that skinny look. You know, we've seen the Kelly Osbournes and the Demi Moores on TV, and they actually look sick. But unfortunately, the notion of being skinny seems to be becoming a bit in again. So, you know, I really want to shift that to strong rather than skinny. But this is just the cycles we're seeing through the generation, and that particularly gets our girls, doesn't it? But there's a trend that's been hitting our teenage boys. And this is the trend of looksmaxxing, which I had to read a little bit about, I'll be honest with you. And this is it's almost a misogynistic movement. It promotes the idea that the only way for especially a young man to be happy and healthy and sexually attractive and get attention from women is to optimize their looks. So it's based purely on appearance to become successful. And one of the the ideal is this young gentleman called Chad, and the Chad look, or the Chad aesthetic, portrayed as this tall, Caucasian, white alpha male with an angular jaw and big eyes, who's so confident and sexually attractive and career-wise greatly successful because of his looks. And the followers will think that, yes, I have to look like that to be successful. And of course, it's a very, very alarmingly superficial trend aimed at those kids who are at their most vulnerable and thinking they have to have this ultimate look, otherwise they're not good enough and they're not going to attract a girlfriend. To the extreme that some young men are taking steroids or other peptides without good research behind them. They asking for surgery, and they even undergoing things like bone smashing.
No, it's crazy. And you know, this Chad ideal man, and honestly, if we get to the reality of it, it's not what women want anyway, but it's this idea that they're ascending with certain behaviors and they're descending with certain behaviors, and it's all about leveling up, and you're either at this level or you're at that level, and you're never actually good enough in the end anyway.
Yes.
And so it's putting an incredible amount of pressure. And you mentioned bone smashing, and I mean, it sounds absolutely ridiculous and crazy, but just explain to our listeners what that is.
Well, it's actually the concept, because you're trying to get this perfect angular Brad Pitt's jaw, of hitting, the jawbone with a hammer to create little micro fractures. And then the mistaken belief is that in healing these micro fractures, you're going to create this bigger jawline and more square jawline. And of course, it's absolute rubbish and potentially dangerous, but it just shows the influence of influencers with so many followers behind them, but no real substance and science, because let's face it, this is so superficial.
It's so superficial. And another thing that the looksmaxxing involves, and this is so extreme and applies to young men, is the breaking of your leg bones.
Yeah.
To extend your leg bones, because tallness and height is something you have to be a successful man and attract women. And so it really does, it kind of starts with small changes, and then it just gets more and more and more extreme, which is so dangerous to our young men physically. But obviously, even if they don't go to those extents, so bad for their self-esteem.
Yeah.
Because their value is placed only in what they look like. Not in what kind of human being you are, what kind of personality you've got, whether you're kind, any of those things. It's purely on your appearance.
Completely.
So dangerous.
Yeah. And the thing is that we can do things to improve their body image and their self-esteem. It requires a little bit of work from our side as well. But I think we should probably discuss some of the measures that we as parents can take. First of all, we need to identify whether there may be a body image issue. But I always think that by starting the conversation a lot earlier in your young child, in your 5-year-old child, about looks and the value of what's inside versus the value of what's outside, and creating an open channel in a non-judgmental way from a very early age will enable your slightly older child to open up and not feel that they're going to be judged for it. So starting the conversation early, as with a lot of things, can be very helpful. When we talked about a healthy body image, we talked about noticing what a miracle your body actually is. And how often do we actually say this to our kids? I think we need to say it more. Look at your amazing body.
Yeah.
It's transitioning from one grade to another. It's playing sport. It's able to have a conversation. Let's realize that a healthy body is what we want, not a perfect face.
Yeah.
In a way, we also need to watch what social media our kids are consuming.
Definitely.
And be honest with them and say, look, if a certain influencer is not making you feel good about yourself, unfollow them immediately. It means that it's the wrong thing for you.
Yeah.
If you constantly finding them checking themselves in the mirror and photo checking, just try and set limits on that. Super important to build the self-esteem from the inside is to focus on activities where appearance isn't a focus at all. So taking part in sport, going to church, spending time with family and friends, these things are unrelated to what you look like, or hanging out with people who are not going to appreciate you just for your looks. And as I've mentioned, we need to make a big deal through all the ages of focusing on health, not numbers. So you don't look at the scale and say, oh, you need to lose 10 kilograms. Rather say, you know what, we need to talk about body reconstitution. Let's increase your muscle mass. And then maybe one of the hardest things is setting an example as a parent. So for ourselves not to be overly obsessed with our looks and looking perfect. Children don't want perfect parents. It actually puts even more pressure on them.
Yeah.
Not constantly talking about this diet, and I want to lose 3 kilos, etc., etc. So setting a good example so that their internal pillar is strong, so that they're not as prone to hearing the noise of the looksmaxxing community.
So important and so good. You made me think about one of those wonderful Dove adverts. They just have such beautiful insights into these topics. And this one particularly was showing that if a mom doesn't like her nose, chances are her daughter won't like her own nose. If a mom doesn't like her thighs, often the daughter won't like her own thighs. And that just comes from the mom saying, oh, my nose, my thighs. And so I think it's something we need to just zip our lips and even talk about the strength of our own bodies. And even when it's uncomfortable for us, put on your cozy, go for a swim, hang out with your children, do things, make your body move and work, and show your children that I'm not obsessed with the way I look. And it can be hard, but I think those conversations about how we feel and how we look, those are maybe conversations to have with our friend. If we feeling, about our bodies or whatever, not conversations to have with our children or in front of our children.
Yeah.
And I was also just thinking about how often we tell our girls that they're beautiful, which is great, but let's maybe say more about how strong they are, how important and miraculously their bodies are working. I think those little tweaks in our conversations shift big things in their minds. And so, such an important conversation. And again, like all parenting things, we're not going to always get it right.
Absolutely. We're not going to always get it right, but I think this is just a podcast to make ourselves aware as parents of the concepts of body image and looksmaxxing, and how important it is to have open conversations with our children and to be non-judgmental again, so that they come and tell us things that we don't freak out, because then they'll stop telling us things and they'll do it on the sly. And it's really part of understanding the psychology of a teenager. So it's been a wonderful 3 podcasts so far in our teenager series. I've learned a lot. I hope the listeners have learned a lot. Remember, this is for educational purposes only. We are experts, but please see your healthcare practitioner if you are worried, especially a child with self-esteem issues, body image issues. If you think there might be an eating disorder or body dysmorphia, have them evaluated by a professional. In the next episodes, we're going to be looking a little bit more on social media in the teenager. It's probably going to be a solo by our expert, Christy Herselman. But until then, have a wonderful few weeks.
It's been wonderful. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have found this as helpful and enjoyable as Claudia and I have, and we will see you soon. Bye.
Bye now.